Ruth Ready is about healthy marriages because a lot of times women get married or desire to be married and they're not really ready. And so it's about developing healthy relationships, preparing yourself to be in a healthy relationship before you even get married.
Welcome to the My Future Business Show, where we get you in front of your best audience and keep you there. Not only are we interviewing the biggest names in business to help you become even more successful, we're inviting you to book your spot on the show to help you grow your business. So at the end of the call, make sure you fill in the interview application form at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. Hi, and welcome back to the My Future Business Show. It's a wonderful day to be alive. Thank you so very much for everybody who supports the show. Your feedback is just heartwarming. It's humbling. Now, thinking of all things good, I'm on the line with Kitty Arceneauux. How are you, Kitty?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm fantastically well. I like to say I have 2 feet and a heartbeat. We're certainly pushing through with some wonderful experiences on the show, Kitty, and you are next in line. Thank you so very much for coming on the show with me.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Now, on today's call, we're going to be discussing Kitty's range of books, and in actual fact, we're going to be focusing in on her latest, which is called Ruth Ready. But before we do that, Kitty, I'd love to learn a bit about you, your lifestyle, and what you do when you're not writing books. Would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself for the My Future Business Show?
Sure, I can do that. So my name is Kitty Arceneauux, and I am a dedicated wife. I've been married for 17 years, and we have 3 kids together. They're all adult kids.
Mm-hmm.
No grandkids yet. I'm waiting for that. I am a licensed minister 2 times over, and I'm an elder at my local church where I fellowship.
Fantastic.
I've actually been writing. I've been writing not books, but I've been writing like poems and poetry and short stories and stuff since I was about 8 years old. So I've always been writing. And actually, when I'm not writing, my profession is I work in banking, and I've been working in banking over 20 years. So that's me.
That's you. Now, where are you located in this wonderful world of ours?
I'm actually in Slidell, Louisiana, which is like 30 minutes from New Orleans.
Oh, very nice, very nice. Now, I know that you have a membership of Who's Who with the International Library of Poetry. I'd love to learn a little bit more about that.
Yes, I was a part of that. It's been so many years because I have a poetry book also that I published back in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about around the time when I became a part of the International Library of Poetry. And I actually have 2 poems that was included in a collage book that they did where they took different poetry from different writers and made one book. And so I became a member of the Who's Who with the International Library of Poetry because of 2 poems that I wrote, one called The Dream.
Mm-hmm.
The other was called Missing You, and I think it was 3 because another one was Apart. Yeah, so those 3 got, after that they sent me an invitation to join the Who's Who with the International Library of Poetry.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, I also notice here that you were selected as a suggested artist for songwriting with VH1. What is that all about?
So they had a contest back in 2004, and they were looking for songwriters. And so I submitted a song, and although I wasn't one of the winners, they had other categories. And so I was suggested artist for VH1 in April of 2005. And then again, I was honorary mention and February of 2006 for gospel Christian lyrics.
Fantastic. No, I always like to dig a little bit deeper about, I guess the source of the inspiration for people who write. I find that they are amazing people. Um, Poems are incredible. Storytelling is incredible. I've seen your website. You have a handful of different books now. How do you go about the storytelling process, and where do you draw your inspiration from?
My inspiration comes from different, different things that happen in life, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So, and on my website, I do list some of the books, but not all of the books.
Right.
And right now, the books are out of print, but actually, I'm kind of glad that it's out of print because now I get to self-publish them, so I'll be republishing all of my books. So the poetry comes from um, different things that may have happened in my life, different things that I actually see. It may not actually be happening to me. It may be
Mm-hmm.
happening to somebody that I know, or, just listening to people talk. A lot of times I used to just sit by the water, like by the bayou, that we have bayous here in
Yes.
Louisiana,
Yes.
and I would sit by the bayou a lot of times and just write. Like, it's just so easy for me sometimes.
Mm. I'd like to ask, Kitty, do you find because of the nature of the world that we're living in, with all of its turmoil, there are so many good things to talk about, but do you ever find that there's a shade of writing that you do based on, things that are going on in the world and around you?
Oh, yes, I've definitely done that before, especially writing short stories, and I've written skits, um, not actual plays, but just skits. It might be 3 minutes, 5 minutes
Mm-hmm.
long, and a lot of that is drawn from um, things that I see that's going on in the world, whether it's um, something that may not be as encouraging,
Mm-hmm.
but then I can find the encouragement in it. So even though it may be a situation that might not be encouraging, when I begin to write, I'm not going to leave it at that. I'm going to end it on an encouraging note.
It's wonderful, and that's part of the journey, isn't it? Being able to convert that, let's call it negativity, that event, that situation
Yeah.
that's not all that positive, and to have that skill to bring something that is good out of it is certainly a skill. Now, you've currently published 7 books, is that correct?
Yes.
Fantastic. Now,
Yes.
I know that there's a lot to be said for children's books and storytelling. Tell us a little bit about your experience with writing children's books in particular.
Actually, writing my children book was a dare.
Oh.
My daughter, yes, excuse me. My daughter actually did the illustration with those books. I have one called If Mommy Can, I Can, and another one, If Daddy Can, I Can. And so what happened was I was messing with her about her art because she can draw really well. And she said, if you write a children's book, I'll do the illustration. And I said, "They're on." And so I actually wrote the book like in 2 days. It's
Wow.
2 books. I actually wrote them in 2 days. And so she was forced, not really forced, I'm just joking, but she did the illustration. She had a real good time, doing the drawings or whatever. And actually, she's like, well, if you want to do another one, I'm ready. So we might have another one coming out.
Fantastic. There seems to be a lot of joy in your life. I can just feel it from you, and it's a really wonderful thing. Do you find that book writing gives you a level of satisfaction, and how do you feel once you've completed a book?
It actually does. It actually does give me some satisfaction because what I'm doing is I'm pouring out a lot of stuff that's within me. And so once I get it out, a lot of times I'm like really nervous
Mm-hmm.
because I'm thinking, is it good enough? What I'm saying, is it relevant? because my whole objective is to be effective in the lives of other people. And so, a lot of times I'm just like, I'm reading it over and over and over again until I'm actually like, you know what, this is really good.
If I might say so myself. Now,
Right,
now I'd
right.
love to turn our focus, Kitty, onto your latest book, Ruth Ready. Let's talk about that. What's that
Hmm.
about?
Okay. Okay, so Ruth Ready, and the title is a little, some people get distracted by the title because the subtitle says, while you're waiting on your Boaz, you better be Ruth Ready. And so what I did was I pulled from the Book of Ruth in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
She was married before, but her husband died. And so she wanted to be remarried. Well, the book is basically about healthy marriages. So what I did was I went to the Book of Ruth and I, dissected the Book of Ruth, and then I said, I'm going to write this book called Ruth Ready, because a lot of times women get married or desire to be married and they're not really ready.
Mm.
And so we enter the marriage with all kind of um, preconceived notions of how it should be and what the man role is, what the man role is. I'm going to say that again, what the man role is.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not really looking at what their role is. And so I'm just trying to turn the focus so that as a woman gets ready to get married, or even if she's already married, because you might be waiting for your husband to become um, a more responsible man, should I say.
Yes.
You may desire for him to do certain things or be a certain way. So instead of just praying about it like people always do, like they want to pray about it, how about there's something, an action that needs to be taken? And so it's about developing healthy relationships with your spouse or preparing yourself to be in a healthy relationship before you even get married.
And this would dovetail quite well, I suspect, Kitty, into your work. Um, do you find that there seems, well, at least from my perception, there seems to be a lot of marriage issues, maybe because of this very reason. How
Hmm.
how present is this issue? Is it a big problem?
Well, yeah, I'm going to say it's a big problem because, uh, okay, I'm a Christian, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'm going to relate this to the church. So in the church, statistics show that 51% of divorce is people that are Christian. That's a problem.
Mm.
And so it is an issue. And like I said, because a lot of times we go into marriage and we're not really sure, it's like what we were taught when we were growing up, what we saw in our family, you know, um, where you might have the father is saying it should be this way, you got the mother saying it should be this way. And so we get into these relationships and we get into these marriages and we're not really prepared. And so what I'm hoping that Ruth Ready does is to give a different insight and help to prepare the women that aren't married. But then at the same time, those that are married, just sit back and reflect on the marriage, your role in the marriage, your responsibility in the marriage, to give 100 and 100 instead of 50-50.
Yes. Do you find that it being a book of reflection for a woman, and I suspect and a man in many respects, um, is this about just slowing down and saying, what, I should appreciate the things that are happening in my life? How is it structured? What is the message directly inside the book?
Oh, yes. So if I could just name the chapters right quick.
Yes.
So there's a chapter called Love Is. There's a chapter called Loyalty to the Mentorship. Who is Boaz and what does he represent? What does Ruth represent for you before the vows, happy marriage, My husband won't be perfect. That's the chapters. And so what I'm doing is, first I want to define what love is, because we think we know what love is, but we don't really know what love is. A lot of times we think it's a feeling that we have, and actually love is a choice. We can choose to love someone. We do it all the time. We just don't pay attention to it. And so what I'm doing is I'm digging into what love is according to what the Bible says,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then I go into loyalty to mentorship, because what I lacked before I got married was a mentor, someone that had already, someone that was already married, that had a healthy relationship, not a perfect relationship, because no marriage is perfect. And so I talk about the benefits of having a mentor and being loyal to the relationship of that mentor. And then I talk about who is Boaz and what does he represent. A lot of women look at Boaz as the guy who came in and swept Ruth off her feet because he was financially secure. Well, Boaz was more than financially secure. Um, and you want your Boaz, your husband, to be more than financially secure. You want him to be worthy. You want him to have some character qualities, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you want him to be worthy. You want him to be a protector. You want him to be a provider. You want him to be watchful over you, your relationship, your kids. You want him to be compassionate. You want him to be a man of honor. These kind of things. So instead of just looking at that he can take care of me financially, what about the character qualities? And so that's what I talk about in that chapter. And I'm not letting the ladies off the hook, because the next chapter is, what does Ruth represent for you?
Mm-hmm.
And those same qualities that I mentioned for Boaz is the same qualities that I mentioned for Ruth. She has to have these same qualities, because marriage is give and take. And so you have to have these same qualities. Are you compassionate? Are you worthy? Are you a woman of honor? Things like that. And then I'd say before the vows. And so before the vows, I'm talking about the baggage that we come with, taking out the trash. Let's take out the
Yes.
trash before we get married, so we have some things um, that, like I say, that we grew up thinking was right, and it may necessarily be right, or we
Mm-hmm.
may have some insecurities. We may have some past wounds. We may have feeling unworthy from time to time, comparing. Women do a lot of comparing themselves, um, unwilling to change, blaming others. And so I dig into all of those different things. I talk about your preferences versus your needs and things like that. And then I get into the vows. And I actually have some vows from different faiths. I'm not going to say religions. I'm going to say faiths, from
Mm-hmm.
different faiths, to show the difference in the vows and how these vows aren't meant to be broken. We can always work through these vows. Happy marriage. One of the chapters is happy marriage, where I'm basically saying that God didn't promise us a happy marriage. We can choose to be happy, but it's really about having a healthy marriage. And if we have a healthy marriage, then we'll be happy, right? And then the last chapter is my husband won't be perfect. And in this chapter, I'm basically just saying, look, the guy is not perfect. We have to give him a break, right? And so there are some things that we can do to encourage him, to help him along the way,
Mm-hmm.
to help him to understand us as women. And so that's just kind of like a roundabout of the book.
An overview. Thank you so much. It is based in reality, isn't it? As a married man myself, I know that we're not perfect, far from it, in fact. And when you come to that
Hmm.
realization as a partner, and that's what this is, you're in partnership with somebody else in your life, and you stop and take stock of where you are, this book is obviously steeped in practicality. And now I wonder, have you had any experiences with partners that have read this book, and what have they taken from it?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Okay, so there is a couple.
Hmm.
Well, the lady I spoke with, the female, and she said one of the things she said, I read it the first time, I was just reading it, and then the second time I went back and I actually read it. And inside the book, there's activities to do. There's some thought-provoking questions. And so she took the time to do it the second time. And she says, you know what I did after I read the book the second time and did some of the activities? I really saw my errors. And I decided that I am going to follow the instructions in the book, and I'm going to do some things different. And so like 3 weeks later, she says, we are actually having such a good time just because of some of the things that I read. She said her favorite one was chapter 8. Um, and then her next favorite one, in chapter 8 is My Husband Won't Be Perfect. And then she said the next one was chapter 6, the vows. Because in there I also talk about the difference between a contractual marriage and a covenant marriage. And so she said she's now treating her husband differently because she read the book. And
That's
so
what.
that was very encouraging for me.
That's wonderful. That comes back to that satisfaction in knowing that the work that you're doing is making a difference. So it's an asset. Um,
Yes.
Kitty, I'd love to talk a little bit now about your website. And I've noticed here that you can help people write their first book. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So I have a book. It's called Jump Start to Writing Your First Book. And a lot of people think that writing the book is complicated when it's really not. And so what I do is I actually hold some classes, some seminar classes that they can sign up for. And we go through some different activities. In the book, I show them how easy it is to get your thoughts from your mind to the paper, because a lot of times people think that they have to write the chapters in order, when you don't have to write them in order. You just have to get them out first,
Hmm.
and then you can put them in the order that it needs to be. And so that's what I do. I enjoy working with people to help them to get their thoughts from their mind to the paper.
Do you also find that when you're working with people who want to write a book, that occasionally this, I guess, self belief about I'm no good at writing, I'm not good at grammar and punctuality, do you find that that holds people back? And if they're not good at writing, but they really have this desire to put pen to paper, what do you say to them?
Oh, that is an awesome question, because I get that a lot. Well, I'm not a good writer. Things like that. You don't have to be a good writer. All you need is a good story, right?
Hmm.
And so that you just write. And what I tell them is just write it. Just write it, because that's where I can come in or someone else can come in. There's people that does editing, and I do some editing. There's people that proofread. You know, um, I consider myself as a book strategist, because I can take your work and I can put it in the order that it needs to be to make your chapters flow. It's just a gift, um, and I can do that. So, and what I try to tell them is there's a lot of people, best-selling authors, that never even wrote. They might speak and record it, and
Hmm.
somebody else types it. So they're not worrying about the commas and the periods, you know. And so I just want to get them the writing. Just you have a story. Everybody has a story. You know some information that somebody else may only know a little bit, but you know a little bit more about it. Write about it. Help someone.
And this would also, I suspect, Kitty, be about being there for the writer as an accountability partner, because I think that you get that early momentum, and then you fall off the wagon, as it were. Do you find that there's this accountability component to this sort of work that you're doing?
Oh, most definitely. And actually, in the book, Jumpstart to Writing Your First Book, I actually talk about that. I actually talk about getting somebody who can hold you accountable. Somebody that's going to call you or contact you and say, hey, what chapter are you on? Hey, how's your writing coming? Because what that does is it allows you to know that they're looking forward to your work being finished. That lets you know that when they're asking you, you're really not going to lie to them and say, oh, I'm on chapter 5, and you still haven't finished chapter 1, right?
Yeah.
And so that just kind of gets you going. And then that way you'll have somebody to say, hey, look, this is what I wrote. Would you read it? Or this is what I just finished writing. Would you listen to it? So that it gives you that extra push that you need, because now somebody else is interested in the work that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing this wonderful insight into your process, into the work you're doing now. One of the most important points of the call is to know where people can go when they want to work with you, when they want to find your wonderful books. Where are they going to find you?
Okay, so my website is kitty'sbookshelf.com, and I'm going to spell that. It's kitty'sbookshelf.com, kitty'sbookshelf.com. My email address is booksbykitty@yahoo.com. That's booksbykitty@yahoo.com. And they can, because on the website there's a contact me, and so they could contact me, and I'll get an email from that, or they can just go straight to the email and send me an email. I look forward to working with anyone, basically. I actually have a lady in Tampa, Florida, that I'm going to be working with, Jumpstart to Writing her first book. And another young lady, I cannot remember at this time where she is, but she's also not local.
Well, I know that you've also had some wonderful reviews and feedback from across the pond in Australia. That's wonderful news. So for everybody who is on the call today, I will certainly make the links available back to kitty'sbookshelf.com below the post. No matter where you are, you will find those links. Kitty, it's been an absolute treat, my pleasure, to spend some time with you on the My Future Business show today.
It's actually been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed talking with you.
Thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed the call, then make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share us with your friends, and book your spot on the show at myfuturebusiness.com/interviews. And if you're looking for solutions that will help grow your business, then visit myfuturebusiness.com/shop.